Lieutenant Ethan Ward had always known that joining the Galactic Federation would not be easy. As Earth's forces were new to the vast intergalactic community, they were often met with doubt, even hostility, from older, more advanced alien species. The humans, after all, had only just begun their journey in the stars, and their reputation was still raw and unpolished. But Ethan had trained his entire life for this moment, believing that humanity had the resilience, the strength, and the potential to prove themselves worthy of their place in the galaxy. Still, nothing had prepared him for the cold, intimidating world of intergalactic diplomacy. Standing before the towering alien leaders, he felt small. His nerves were on edge, his heart racing, but his determination burned brightly within him. His mission was to participate in a high-stakes peacekeeping operation in a sector controlled by the Yizrath, one of the most feared and respected alien species in the Federation. The Yizrath were known for their sheer power and ruthless nature, and their general Vornak was no exception. Vornak had earned his reputation through countless victories, and he viewed the humans as nothing more than naive newcomers who had no place in the galactic arena. Ethan had heard the stories about General Vornak, his cruelty, his imposing presence, but nothing could have prepared him for the real thing. Vornak's eyes were cold and calculating, his movements precise and purposeful, every step radiating authority. The negotiation was tense, the atmosphere thick with unspoken threats and the weight of centuries of alien politics. Ethan was part of the human delegation, tasked with representing Earth's interests, but he knew that their voice was barely a whisper compared to the power of the alien forces around them. He tried his best to maintain composure, standing tall, and speaking with authority, but his inexperience in the delicate art of diplomacy became apparent when he made a minor slip-up during the discussion. It was a simple mistake, a miscalculation in his phrasing that would have been overlooked in any other setting, but not here. Not with the Yizrath. General Vornak, who had been silent for much of the exchange, saw his chance. Without warning, his massive hand shot out, and the back of his clawed palm landed across Ethan's cheek with a resounding slap. The force of the blow knocked Ethan's head to the side, his vision spinning for a moment. The room fell into stunned silence. The Yizrath soldiers behind Vornak smirked, some even chuckling under their breath, while the rest of the humans in the room stiffened, their faces flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anger. Ethan's cheek stung, the sharp pain sending a wave of heat through his body. But it wasn't just the physical pain that cut deeper. It was the humiliation. The act was a clear statement from Vornak, a reminder that humans were inferior, unworthy of any real respect in this galaxy. As Vornak turned to leave the room, his expression unreadable, Ethan stood frozen, the sting on his face lingering but his resolve hardening. His fists clenched involuntarily at his sides, and his breath came in shallow, controlled bursts. Every inch of him wanted to lash out, to strike back at the alien that had just treated him like a mere insect. But something held him back. He knew that reacting in anger would only reinforce the very image of humanity as volatile and unrefined. No, this wasn't over. He would not let this moment define him or his species. He would show Vornak, and everyone else, that humanity's strength came not just from its physical prowess, but from its spirit, the unbreakable will to fight back, no matter the odds. As the doors of the chamber closed behind General Vornak, Ethan stood alone in the silence. His comrades, equally stunned, glanced at him with a mix of pity and confusion, unsure of what to say or do. But Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the now empty doorway. There was no doubt in his mind. He would make Vornak regret this moment. He would make the entire galaxy see that humans were not to be underestimated. Ethan wasn't just going to prove himself, he was going to prove humanity's worth. And no slap, no insult could ever change that. As the days passed after the humiliating encounter with General Vornak, Ethan couldn't shake the sting of that slap. But it wasn't the physical pain that lingered. It was the burning desire to prove himself, to prove humanity's worth. In the quiet of his quarters, away from the eyes of his fellow cadets and officers, Ethan found himself drifting back to the past, to a time when the lessons of resilience had been instilled in him. Ethan's father, a war veteran who had fought in Earth's first great conflicts, had always been his hero. From an early age, Ethan had listened intently to his father's stories of hardship, survival, and the importance of standing tall in the face of adversity. He had learned that strength wasn't just about physical power or military might. It was about the will to keep going when everything seemed stacked against you. His father's words rang in his ears. "It's not how hard you fall, son. It's how you rise that matters." Those lessons had carried Ethan through many challenges as a child, but they became especially important when he joined the Federation Academy, where humanity's place in the galaxy was constantly questioned. The other cadets, trained by species, who had mastered space travel for centuries, saw humanity as a race of newcomers, struggling to catch up. Many of his classmates doubted humanity's place in the Federation, and some even doubted their own abilities. But Ethan pushed forward, determined to show that humans could stand shoulder to shoulder with any species. But nothing had prepared him for the reality of what he faced on this mission. The cutthroat politics of intergalactic diplomacy, the endless power struggles, and the sheer hostility of alien species like the Yizrath had made him feel small, insignificant. And yet, it was in these moments of despair that he drew strength from the very lessons his father had taught him. General Vornak's slap hadn't just been an insult to Ethan, it was an insult to humanity itself. And Ethan would not stand for it. That night, as he lay in his bunk, staring up at the ceiling, Ethan began to think. He wasn't going to let this humiliating moment define him, or humanity. If he was to show the galaxy what humans were made of, he would need more than just raw courage. He needed a plan. He needed strategy. And that was where humanity's strength lay. While the older, more experienced alien races relied on their age-old tactics and power, Ethan knew that the key to victory wasn't just brute force, it was the ability to adapt. Humans, despite their youth, had an unparalleled ability to think outside the box, to find solutions in ways others never could. He had seen it in his training. He had seen it in the way humans, through ingenuity, had turned the tide in past conflicts. Ethan wasn't going to take the Yizrath head-on with strength alone. He would use their overconfidence against them. He would show them that the humans they so easily dismissed had a mind sharp enough to outwit them at their own game. As the days went on, Ethan quietly began to gather information, study the movements of Vornak's forces, and observe the alien leaders. He noticed something that most of the more seasoned officers overlooked. The Yizrath believed themselves to be invincible. They had ruled over their territories for centuries, and their arrogance made them predictable. They didn't take the humans seriously, thinking them to be nothing more than an irritant. This was their mistake. Ethan knew that he couldn't match the alien forces in sheer strength or experience, but he could use their underestimation of humanity to his advantage. Slowly, carefully, he began to formulate his plan, a plan that would take the Yizrath by surprise and make them rethink everything they thought they knew about humans. The next time he saw General Vornak, the fire in Ethan's eyes was unmistakable. Vornak was surrounded by his generals, laughing and discussing their next move as if humanity were already defeated. But Ethan's gaze never wavered from the imposing alien. The slap, the humiliation. It would not be forgotten, but it would not break him either. He was ready to turn the tables. With his plan taking shape, Ethan knew that now was the time to act. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's future hung in the balance. It would be Ethan, the seemingly ordinary cadet from Earth, who would make the first move to prove that humans were not to be underestimated. As the meeting ended, Ethan stood tall, the weight of his resolve pressing on him. He walked out of the room, his mind sharp and focused, and his eyes locked on the towering figure of General Vornak. He will regret underestimating humanity, Ethan thought, his heart steady and unwavering. The human spirit, after all, was not something to be slapped down easily. The days following the humiliation had been tense, but they also brought unexpected opportunities. Ethan's success in organizing a covert mission to infiltrate an alien stronghold seemed like a stroke of luck to the more experienced soldiers around him. The task was nearly impossible. At least, that's what everyone said. The target was an ancient, heavily fortified Yizrath base, deep within enemy territory, with nearly all of the Yizrath forces stationed there. On top of that, the operation was to be carried out by a small, ragtag group of human soldiers who were largely untested in real combat. Many of the seasoned soldiers, veterans of long-standing campaigns, believed the mission to be nothing more than a suicide mission. The odds of success were so slim that they whispered among themselves that sending a few dozen humans on a mission like this was almost insulting to their own dignity. But Ethan wasn't about to let fear dictate the outcome. The moment he was assigned command, he knew the conventional approach would not work. He had to think differently. The Yizrath were strong, their technology advanced, and their tactics ruthless. But Ethan had learned something from the harsh lessons of his own past. Humans had a gift that many other species lacked: creativity. Humans could see solutions where others saw only walls. Where the Yizrath saw a fortified base, Ethan saw opportunity. He had already begun formulating a strategy that would use the aliens' arrogance against them. The mission began with silence. The small squad of humans moving under the cover of darkness. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and barely equipped for the job. But Ethan knew that it was the unexpected that would win this battle, not brute strength. While the Yizrath relied on their advanced technology, massive war machines, precision, weaponry, and impenetrable shields, Ethan relied on something far simpler: basic human ingenuity. They had no access to high-end explosives or fancy gadgets, but they had their wits. They set traps, using basic tripwires and homemade explosives. They used the terrain to their advantage, digging simple pits and camouflaging them with natural foliage. It was primitive, crude even, but the Yizrath, in their overconfidence, didn't think to expect it. As the mission unfolded, Ethan's squad moved like shadows. They disabled enemy surveillance with basic interference devices, jammed communication lines using makeshift electronics, and snuck past patrols unnoticed. When they finally reached the heart of the Yizrath base, the unexpected happened. A series of makeshift bombs, detonated at just the right moment, crippled the alien defenses. The Yizrath, assuming that the humans could only fight with their strength and advanced weaponry, were blindsided by the simplicity and effectiveness of the human-made traps. The aliens scrambled to respond, but the damage had been done. Ethan's squad took control of key points in the base, causing massive confusion within the Yizrath ranks. Against all odds, the operation was a success. The human squad had emerged, victorious, capturing key intelligence and crippling a major portion of the Yizrath forces. It was a victory that no one, not even Ethan's own squad, thought possible. But to General Vornak, it was nothing more than a stroke of luck. He refused to acknowledge that the humans could be capable of such a feat. To him, their success was a fluke, an anomaly, and he would not allow such a setback to go unpunished. He ordered a full-scale counterattack to crush the humans once and for all. As the Yizrath forces began to mobilize, Ethan stood at the edge of the battlefield, watching the vast armies gather, their heavy war machines rumbling toward his position. The odds were overwhelming. It seemed like the end was inevitable. But as he looked out over the field, a calmness settled over him. His mind raced with calculations, and his thoughts turned back to the plan he had carefully crafted. There was still one final trick up his sleeve, something the Yizrath would never see coming. The human spirit had shown its resilience before, and now it was time to turn the tables once again. He wasn't going to give in, not now, not ever. Ethan could feel it. This time, the Yizrath would be the ones caught off guard. This time, the battle would be theirs to lose. And as the first of the alien forces advanced, Ethan's eyes narrowed with determination. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the future of humanity in the stars. The day of reckoning had arrived. After weeks of tense buildup, the Federation forces, humans and aliens alike, had prepared for the decisive battle to retake the starbase from the Yizrath. The starbase was a crucial strategic point in the war, a key to controlling the sector. If the Yizrath held it, their grip on the galaxy would tighten even further. If the Federation retook it, the balance of power could shift. Ethan and his squad, once doubted and dismissed by their superiors, stood on the front lines, determined to prove their worth. They weren't the most experienced, nor the most heavily armed, but they had something the Yizrath didn't: the ability to adapt, to think outside the box. The battlefield was a hellscape of flashing lights, roaring engines, and the heavy thrum of weapons fire. The Yizrath forces, vastly superior in number and technology, stormed forward with overwhelming force. General Vornak watched from the comfort of his command post, his cold, calculating eyes fixed on the chaos below. He had no doubt that victory was within his grasp. This time, the humans would be crushed underfoot, just like all the other inferior species that had dared to challenge the Yizrath. But Ethan's squad wasn't playing by the same rules. From the very beginning of the battle, Ethan's tactics frustrated the alien forces. His squad, though small, moved with uncanny precision. They set ambushes in the most unlikely places, luring the Yizrath into traps with decoys and fake retreats. The aliens, so used to dominating their opponents with sheer firepower, couldn't keep up with the unpredictable nature of human tactics. Every time they thought they had the humans cornered, they found themselves walking into another trap. Ethan's mind was sharp, his every move a calculated risk, each decision based on his understanding of the Yizrath's arrogance. They believed themselves to be unbeatable, and that was their fatal flaw. Despite the overwhelming odds, the humans held their ground, and for the first time, Vornak's confidence began to crack. He watched, seething as his forces faltered. The humans weren't just fighting, they were winning, using their ingenuity and unpredictability to turn the tide. Ethan had learned from the best. His father's lessons of resilience, honor, and thinking outside the box were now on full display. Ethan's squad was no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something bigger: respect. They were fighting to prove that humanity belonged in this galaxy, that they weren't some insignificant species to be brushed aside. The battle raged on, but it was clear that the humans were gaining ground. And then, in the midst of the chaos, General Vornak made his move. Determined to settle the grudge between him and the human cadet who had humiliated him, he ordered a personal confrontation. He descended onto the battlefield, his imposing figure cutting through the smoke and debris like a living weapon. Ethan saw him, his heart pounding in his chest, but there was no fear in his eyes. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The two leaders faced off, surrounded by the wreckage of their armies. Vornak towered over Ethan, his muscles rippling with alien strength, his eyes burning with rage. But Ethan stood his ground, his body tired but his spirit unbroken. He had already beaten the Yizrath in ways they never saw coming. Now he would defeat their mightiest warrior in combat. The alien general was skilled, but he underestimated the power of the human will. Ethan's tactics were swift and clever, his movements calculated, dodging blows and striking when Vornak least expected it. Vornak's strength was impressive, but his rage clouded his judgment. The battle raged between them. each blow a reminder of the vast difference in their physical abilities. But it wasn't strength that would win this fight. It was determination. And Ethan had that in spades. After what seemed like an eternity, Vornak staggered, exhausted and defeated, unable to match the human cadet's relentless spirit. The alien general, once invincible, now knelt before Ethan, his defiance shattered. The battlefield fell silent, and in that moment, Vornak, the great Yzrath leader, was forced to look up at the young human who had brought him to his knees. "Spare me," Vornak whispered, his voice heavy with humiliation. For the first time, the mighty general understood the power of humanity. It wasn't in their weapons or their technology. It was in their hearts, their unbreakable spirit. Ethan, his chest rising and falling with each breath, looked down at Vornak. His heart raced, but his resolve remained unshaken. The fight wasn't just about winning this battle. It was about proving that humans would not be dismissed. "You're not in control anymore," Ethan said, his voice steady, "and you never were." The once mighty general had been brought low, and the human spirit had triumphed once again. The battle had ended, but its echoes would resonate across the galaxy for years to come. The Federation, witnessing the raw determination and unexpected brilliance of humanity, could no longer ignore the human's potential. Earth, once dismissed as a newcomer in the vast expanse of space, had proven its worth. Ethan Ward, the young cadet who had stood against impossible odds, was hailed as a hero across the Federation. But as the accolades poured in, Ethan remained, quietly aware of a deeper truth. The real victory was not in the medals or ceremonies. It was in the respect humanity had finally earned. The humans had fought not just to survive, but to stand tall alongside the greatest species in the galaxy, showing them that they would not be swept aside. The events that had unfolded were more than just a personal triumph for Ethan. They were a turning point for humanity. The Federation, realizing the strength and resilience of Earth's people, officially granted humanity a permanent seat at the galactic table. It was a moment of immense pride, not only for Ethan, but for all of humanity. Yet, as he stood in the midst of the celebrations, his mind wandered. He understood that this was just the beginning. The true legacy of humanity wasn't about one battle or a single hero. It was about the unyielding spirit of a people determined to make their mark on the stars. But then, something unexpected happened. General Vornak, the alien leader who had once humiliated Ethan and who had seen humanity as little more than an annoyance, came to him. The once feared general, now a shadow of his former self, sought Ethan out in private. Ethan's initial instinct was to dismiss him, but there was a sincerity in Vornak's eyes that made him pause. Vornak, humiliated and defeated, did not come to seek revenge. Instead, he came to acknowledge something he had never understood before: the strength of humanity's spirit. He spoke of how, despite the countless losses and challenges, humanity had never once given up. It was a trait Vornak had seen in the battlefield, in the way humans had fought and outsmarted his forces. And now, in his own defeat, Vornak realized that no other species had ever possessed that kind of will. In a moment of surprising humility, Vornak offered an alliance, a chance to put aside old grudges and work together for a stronger galaxy. Ethan, cautious but understanding the importance of the gesture, agreed. The alliance that formed between the two was an unlikely one, but it was born from respect, a bond that would pave the way for new possibilities and open doors that neither side had ever considered before. As the days passed, Ethan found himself thrust into a leadership role he had never anticipated. The eyes of the galaxy were upon him now, and humanity's future was in his hands. His thoughts often drifted to the vastness of space, the challenges ahead, and the uncertainties that awaited them. There would be other wars, other battles, and endless political challenges. Yet, in the quiet moments, as he gazed out at the stars from the command deck of the Federation flagship, Ethan understood something deeply important. It wasn't the strength of the military or the power of technology that had secured humanity's place in the galaxy. It was their unwavering will to rise, to adapt, and to fight for what they believed in, no matter the odds. That was the legacy they would leave behind. And so, as Ethan stood on the edge of the starboard deck, looking out at the infinite void before him, he thought about how far humanity had come. From the moment of his first humiliation to the clash with General Vornak, to this moment of triumph, it had all come down to one thing: the human spirit. He thought about his father's lessons and how, despite everything, humans had never lost their ability to fight for what was right. The galaxy had seen it now, and it would never be the same. A soft smile crossed Ethan's face as he whispered to himself, his voice steady but full of meaning. 3 seconds. That's all it took to change everything. The power of that moment of his defiance against Vornak's slap had sent ripples across the stars, changing the course of history. And in the heart of that victory, humanity had found its place in the galaxy, one that would not be erased no matter the challenge. The journey was just beginning, and Ethan knew one thing for sure: humanity would always rise.